Thanks for being here today, and thank you for your understanding. We're very happy that we were able to reschedule this with Laurie today. We'll just say everything's good. She's happy to be here. We're happy you're here. And we know that this is such a valuable topic. We're here today for enhancing the teacher observation process with AI. Probably many of you have already become quite familiar with different aspects of AI. Some of you may be already using it in some aspects of your work or outside of school. I think our familiarity grows every day, certainly when it comes to AI. But the whole kind of frontier of how we might be able to use AI as a part of the teacher observation process is pretty interesting territory to start exploring and learning more about. So we're thrilled that Laurie's here to share it with us today. It was great to see Laurie at our conference where she shared on this topic, and it was very, very well received. Laurie Gregory is the Director of Educational Services and the Chief Information Officer and Data Protection Officer for Eden Central School District. So we are very happy to have her here today. I would remind everybody, please stay muted. This is being recorded. And without further delay, I'm going to turn it over to Laurie. Laurie, where are you? Where is Eden Central School District?
So Eden is not far from Buffalo. We're about 20 minutes south of the city, right next to Hamburg, New York, if you're familiar with Hamburg. We're really known for the Eden Corn Fest and our agricultural enterprises in Eden. So
I want
that's
to come to Corn Fest. Anything
yeah,
with corn in it, I like. I want to come to that.
yeah, that you should come. It's usually at the end of July. So it's quite a fun time. But thank you again, everybody, for being willing to come back for a different date and work with me because I do appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
And as I said, just please stay muted unless, there'll certainly be opportunities to unmute. We want to hear from you both in the chat and your voice, asking questions, comments. But other than when you're doing that, just keep your mute button on. That's good.
Okay, so when you think about artificial intelligence, it's one of those things that really is changing the way we live almost immediately. There's inventions that you can think of probably over time that have changed the way we live, but then also changed the way we do business and education. And I think AI is definitely becoming one of those things. When you look at the definition of it, it is technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human learning, comprehension, problem solving, decision making, creativity, and autonomy. So it's the closest thing um, to a human in the realm of machines and technology, which is a little creepy, I'll be honest, but also kind of exciting in the way that it can help us do our work. So I'm just interested in hearing first from those of you who are on here, what is your experience currently with using AI? And when you think about your observation process, for teachers, that's one of the most important jobs that we do as administrators. How do you think it could help you enhance that? I don't know if anybody, you can respond in the chat if you want, or you can feel free to unmute and just share.
Hi, everyone. My name is Desiree Rodriguez. I work for East Ramapo Central School District, and I'm a school administrator. So normally when I use AI, I use it when I'm stuck. And sometimes I'm not 100% sure what kind of feedback I will give a teacher if I'm either in the ineffective bracket or the developing bracket. I'll put in AI please give me feedback or around the Denison rubric in between these two brackets on regards to this topic.
Yeah, that's a great way to use it. Anybody else have any experience?
I use it. I try to do the same thing in terms of feedback to teachers, but I often find, I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, it's kind of like something you've already thought of, not taking it like going deeper into what you want from the teacher. So I'm not sure sometimes if I'm, maybe it's my wording, but I don't always like the feedback it gives because it's something you may have already suggested.
Okay. So yeah, it's imperfect, and we'll talk a bit about that. Does anybody else want to share anything before we continue?
We do have a few comments in the chat. I'm not sure if you can see those.
No.
I had posted in the comments that I use it to organize my notes. So I sort my notes into the rubric because I used to spend a lot of time flipping back and forth through notes in order to sort them into the different domains on the Danielson rubric. So I found that extremely helpful. I've also used it when I'm meeting with teachers if they're having particular problems with students or they're looking to add visuals or create social stories. I've used it for those things. And often I will run teacher recommendations or emails through it to help make it sound more professional or to clean up my language.
Yeah, so a few people said they use it for writing, to revise their writing, use it for letters, use it as a thought partner for an action plan. There's a lot of different ideas actually in here. I think people are using AI in a lot of different ways. So that's pretty interesting.
Can we ask Kim for a minute, Kim Casaburi? I try to use it for feedback, but I don't always like the feedback it provides. Kim, maybe you can elaborate on that a bit.
So that's what I was kind of mentioning before. For example, I was observing a teacher and I felt like students weren't engaged, like they were engaged, they were doing the work, but it wasn't like minds-on engagement. And really, I think throughout the lesson, she needed to conduct more checks for understanding so that she can engage the students more. And when I put it into AI, although I didn't say it like that, but I pointed out Danielson and I said, provide teacher feedback. It was a little lengthy. I didn't like what it gave me. It was like things I already thought of, and she's
Okay.
a very experienced teacher, so it's stuff that I've already spoken to her about, and I wanted it to kind of go deeper, and it just gave you typical checks for understanding and things that she could have done, like, a turn and talk and things like that, but it didn't help. It wasn't helpful. So maybe it was my wording, but I didn't
Which
find it helpful.
platform were you using? Which AI
Well,
program?
I use both Chat GPT and I also use the pilot with the with Microsoft because that's
Oh, okay.
work.
Right.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Did you ask any follow-up questions? Because I mean, we will get into this as I go through the presentation, but
I did, and it
sometimes,
actually gives you follow-up. Like, do you want
yeah,
this? Do you want that? So I kept doing it, but just
it just didn't get you what you
yeah,
wanted. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
no.
All
If I
right.
went back to that teacher, she's got 20 years experience and said what it said, she'd look at me like, really, I do this all the time.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, and then we'll talk about how to use what you find and also some tips and tricks to make your output a little better. All right, guys. So when I think about teacher observations, it can be a little overwhelming. It's a lot of work. I mean, most of you probably have a ton of teacher observations you have to do every single year. I myself do over 50 a year, but I'm in a small rural district. To me, that's a lot, but maybe to some of you it isn't. But at any rate, when I'm trying to fit in so many things, so many facets of my job, and along with this, I'm often concerned that I'm not being as objective and consistent as I could be. Maybe I'm not always the best reliable rater, and I'm trying to instead be too efficient. So AI really allows us to have the best of both worlds.
That was Thursday. We must have left the parent, okay, it went like this.
Did
We were
someone have a
there.
question or?
A reminder to please mute unless you're making a comment or asking a question. Thank
Okay.
Justice.
Right. The justice is the father.
And this
So I really feel like AI can help us with objectivity and consistency because there is no human bias. There is no such thing as I know this teacher and I like her, and I don't feel good giving her a lower score. There is no such thing as fatigue and the things that humans experience when it comes to AI. It does its best to uniformly apply the rubric as long as you provide it to it. And it can pinpoint data and details that I might miss. And that's what I really like about it, is sometimes it points out things that I didn't even think about. In terms of the speed, I mean, you can produce an entire report with detailed feedback in just a couple of minutes. Now we're going to talk about how you don't just grab that and go, because that's not effective either. But it can research hundreds and hundreds of sources, and it would take us months to do the type of research it can do in just a couple of minutes. And so you're getting all kinds of different suggestions and action steps and possibilities when it comes to providing feedback. It also can be an expert in all content areas and grade levels where we know we cannot. We all have our specializations and our certifications, and sometimes you're in a course that you really don't know much about and you're observing, and that can be very challenging. When we can reduce the time it takes for us to evaluate, it frees up time for us to have better, more high quality conversations and even more frequent visits. And it allows our teachers to receive feedback quickly, which increases its relevance. Nobody really likes to wait and hear how they did. And I'm going to talk also about how teachers can use AI as a coaching tool to improve their lessons even without us being involved. So some tips and tricks that you always want to remember when it comes to using AI to ensure that you have the best possible output is always be sure to upload your rubric with the prompt. And we'll talk about how you can save some of your prompts and not have to do that every single time. But you definitely want AI to have the rubric, the correct rubric that you're using for your school. Be as detailed as possible in your notes or scripts. AI doesn't have our eyes and our ears. It can only see and hear what you describe to it. So if you're not including something in your script, it's not going to include that in the evaluation and the feedback. So that might be where some people are getting some not so great feedback, is that you're seeing things that AI can't see. Is it possible to be word for word and capture every single thing that happens? No, I always try to capture the most important things that are said and done. But just keep in mind that that's another reason you want to adjust your scores and your feedback, is that it may not see everything that you saw. High quality prompts are extremely important. You have to explain the role you want AI to take on, really describe the format you want your output in, what to do when an element is not observed. If you don't want, if you're doing a walkthrough or something and you may not have seen something or a certain element isn't included, explain what you want it to do with that. Do not share teacher names or personally identifiable information. This is the DPO in me coming out. I know some of them have Ed Law 2D agreements with us, but I still get nervous about putting any kind of identifiable information out there. So usually what I do is I take my notes in Google Docs, I make a copy of them, and I delete the teacher's name and building and all of that information from the top when I run it through AI. I also tend to use teacher and student when I'm talking about who's speaking and things like that in my notes, so that nobody's being identified. Always, again, review the output that's produced, edit it, personalize it. Again, AI is not a human being, so it's not really thinking about how the feedback sounds. It doesn't know that the teacher has been working with you for 15 years and you have a great relationship. It is just going to spit out feedback, and it might sound cold and impersonal. So you really need to review everything and personalize it before sharing it. And like we talked about before, remember, it makes mistakes. it might interpret something incorrectly because of just the information it's been provided. So you always want to adjust when necessary, but it can just save you loads of time. So here is an example. We use the Danielson rubric in our district. So this is an example of a prompt that I have used in AI. You'll see how I have the role. You are a school principal. Use Charlotte Danielson's Framework for Teaching 2011 attached to score this teacher's observation. Score only domains 2 and 3, but all elements of both domains. Provide the teacher with specific examples and feedback to support each score. Also create an overall summary of the feedback given. So I'll show you what it looks like when you go into one of these programs, but you probably already know. You could just cut and paste that prompt, and I will actually share these slides with you later. So you could cut and paste my prompt if this is the rubric you use, or you could just delete my rubric and put in your own. But you paste this prompt into the chat of the AI engine, and then make sure you attach your rubric where you can attach a document, and then underneath your prompt, paste your notes that you use or your script of the lesson. So this is an example prompt I've used. This second prompt is what I would use for an unannounced observation. We do 10-minute unannounced observations, and all elements might not be seen during that time. So I do have a line in there about that. So when I started trying this, I was mainly trying it in ChatGPT, but now I tend to use Gemini more frequently just because I like that Gemini has the EdLaw 2D agreement with Google, and I just feel a little safer with what they do with our information. But both of them work in a similar fashion. If you can click on them right from these slides, but if you've been in ChatGPT, you know that this is where your prompt goes. You just enter it, click return or enter, and then it'll answer your question. You can use the plus sign to attach documents. Once you do a question in here, it's all saved under your account on the left side. So you don't always have to reinvent everything when you come in, which is nice. Gemini is very similar. There's just, again, a box for you to enter your prompt and your notes, and then you can add your document. And Gemini also will save your searches or your questions that you've asked. Anybody have any questions at this point?
Good afternoon. This is Damian Lamb from OCs. I have a question.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, comparing Gemini to ChatGPT, do you notice a difference or advantages or disadvantages as far as uploading certain artifacts or resources, particularly, say, if it's a video link or say a slideshow or anything, any advantage or disadvantage you notice since you've used both?
Well, if I'm thinking about just this particular project where I would upload notes from an observation, I haven't noticed a difference. I feel like they both are pretty similar in terms of the feedback they provide. I know that they work in a similar fashion, and I haven't seen anything in terms of other things outside of teacher observations. I feel like Gemini is stronger with research. And especially a deep dive kind of research where you can get a list of your sources and everything. I don't know, but both of them I think are very helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
If I can add and help with that question,
Sure.
Gemini has also a product called Notebook LM, which allows you to put a lot more sources in. Both Gemini and Chat limit you in terms of how many sources you could put up. Like say, I think it's 10 in Chat, but you can easily get around that by combining your sources into one PDF. So now it's one source. And
yeah, I've dabbled a little bit with Notebook LM, and I really do like that for organizing like a folder of information on a topic for sure.
And do you recommend using gems and projects in each of the platforms?
Do I recommend using gems?
Gems.
I've actually, yeah, I've created a gem and I'm going to talk about that
Okay.
a little later.
Laurie, I have a question that
Sure.
I'm sitting here and I'm feeling like it's a dumb question. I know there are no dumb questions, but
No, there's not.
whatever that is kind of question. My question is this: it seems like the process really depends on very detailed and accurate notes, right? That the observer has taken and then fed into AI, right? Is there any way that lessons can be recorded, video recorded, and the recording itself creates the notes? Or is that just
Well, actually, that's an interesting question. So I've tried to record lessons at times using like Read to Write. It's a Chrome extension that can pick up, but I found it's kind of difficult. I'd have to move around the classroom a lot to capture everything. There are better ways to do it. I just don't have access to them here. With a video, I mean, our teachers don't allow us to record them
right?
or do anything. The union is against that. But if your union did allow it and you did a video, there are programs out there that can transcribe videos for you. And I actually did that with the example that I'm going to show in here. I'm going to show a video lesson because it's not from my school. It's from the internet because I didn't want to use something of someone I knew. But I actually did, I can't remember what program I was able to find online that transcribed it for me. And then I was able to upload that. Now, if you can do that, you have a very accurate transcription of what happened. You may not have things that, it may not pick up things that don't have sound or, you know, visual thing. I don't know. So again, you still might need to add to it, but it might be more accurate than you just taking notes. Really, all I can do in my school is take my own notes. So I just try to be as accurate as possible.
I just wanted to kind of put it in the air because I
Yeah.
know all the hurdles about student privacy and all of those things,
Mhm.
but I really, you know, for years have been such a fan of the teaching channel, which has relied on videos of
Oh, yeah.
actual teaching in classrooms for learning and for practicing the observation process. And I could even see a situation where perhaps a teacher wanted a part of a lesson to be videoed and then even himself or herself, you know, feed that in and get some kind of self-feedback on one part of a lesson. So I know we're treading very softly here, and our keyword today, I think, is enhancing, right? Enhancing the process, not taking it over. We all understand that.
No, you know, you can't.
But I think
take
it's in,
over.
you know, these are interesting things to think about. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you for the question. Okay, guys, so like I was saying, I have an example lesson for you. And the little GIF there is actually kind of just foreshadowing of what kind of lesson this is going to be. So gear up for that. But I do want you, I'm just going to show a little bit of it. I'm not going to show the whole thing, but I want you just to think about it, no matter what rubric you're using, what are the big takeaways that are coming to mind when you're watching this teacher? And then I used a transcription of this video and uploaded it and used Google Gemini to evaluate this teacher using the Danielson rubric, and I'll show you what it did. So I'm going to have to switch my sharing right now. Just a second. You guys see that video on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. And if for some reason you can't hear it, stop me.
Okay, everyone, settle down, settle down. Thank you. Okay, today we're starting a new unit of work on the weather. Okay, pretty important. So if we could please open up your books, thanks, and just write that heading down, the weather. So on your table you'll find a word search. On that word search, I'll spend a bit of time putting it together. is everything we're going to be doing in this little unit on the next couple of days and the next couple of lessons is in that word search. So what I'm going to do is give you 20 minutes or so just to go through in silence, please, and complete that word search. Yes, Tom, what is it?
What's Aurora Borealis?
Aurora Borealis. Okay, pens down, everybody. Aurora Borealis. Does anyone know? Mary, what do you think?
Sorry, sir, I don't know.
Fair enough. Anyone else? Bill, what do you reckon?
I don't know, sir.
Well, it's obvious we're coming from a pretty low base then, isn't it? Okay, the Aurora Borealis, for those of you who don't know, Mary, Bill, Tom, it's the term used to refer to the northern lights found in the northern hemisphere, okay? So if you could all remember that, please. Aurora Borealis, northern lights. Okay, off you go. All right, everybody, that'll do. That's plenty of time.
So I haven't finished yet.
Oh, well, we really must get over it. How about you just finish it off for homework, okay? All right, so we can put that word search away and we'll get stuck into the weather. Now, I've got some notes up on the board there that we need to make sure we've got into our notebooks.
So we did this in science last term.
It's like last year.
Well, that's good because this stuff's pretty important. So I've got them up on the board there. Can everyone see that? Okay, if we could start copying down. First thing is that the weather, okay, as it says up there, the definition, it's a state of the atmosphere over a short period of time. Now, that state of the atmosphere includes the following. The temperature, how hot or cold the air is. And that's measured by, anybody?
Thermometer.
Yep, well done. The next one, humidity, the amount of moisture in the air. Obviously, when it's raining, there's a lot of moisture in the air. But at other times, there can be moisture in the air and we don't know it. But we can feel it because we get what happens to us when there's a lot of moisture in the air.
Do we become humid?
Yeah, we become humid, yeah. How do we know that? Begins with S. We begin to...
Sweat.
Sweat, very good. If the air is dry, it takes the sweat away, absorbs all that water off us.
Okay, I'm going to stop that there. So what are your big takeaways from that lesson? We didn't see the whole thing, but I think you got a good enough chunk that you have an idea about this teacher.
I just wanted to ask, was that real or was that like a Saturday Night Live skit or something? Because it was like
I think it might have just been made to be funny. I'm not sure. I just
Okay.
Googled bad lesson and that's what came up.
Yeah, because it was just like so off. It was like, this can't be a real teacher here. It's like,
Yeah, and that's why I put the Ferris Bueller's Day Off thing on there because it reminded me of him.
yeah, so that's what I thought. I was like, wait, this
It's
must be
like
a joke.
too bad to
There's
be
no way
true,
this is a real
right?
teacher. This is no way this is a teacher.
Oh my gosh.
I just wanted to comment that in today's world, this is Dawn Buchanan speaking. Teachers do not sit by the desk. You move around, you make yourself accessible to the students. And some of them were totally off tasks, and he was just not in tune with them at all.
No.
Very teacher-centered lesson also.
Yes. And someone in the chat said lacks planning, questioning, engagement, assessment. The list goes on.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Sadly, I've observed teachers like that. Oh no.
And actually worse.
Oh God. Okay. Okay, so did anyone catch any of his like insulting comments to the kids, or like how he called out the three kids who didn't know the answer and think, so I'll just go right to the feedback. And again, I used a transcription of this video and just uploaded it to see what Gemini would do. Okay. Okay, so you can see how it printed out a nice organized report. So again, this is the Danielson rubric. So under creating an environment of respect and rapport, the teacher uses dismissive and condescending language. Sounds better than this in response to a student's activity. Well, it's obvious we're coming from a pretty low base then, isn't it? That's what he said when the students did not know what Aurora Borealis meant. He just had a kind of a sarcastic tone with them. And again, like when you see the wording here, you probably wouldn't write like you have dismissive and condescending language. Maybe you would. You might spin it in a different way. So you probably don't want to just take what AI says and use it. But unsatisfactory for the culture for learning. I mean, 20 minutes on a word search is pretty bad. They were copying notes. He was answering his own questions. Managing procedures and behavior, he got basic, but I feel like it was due to the kids being pretty good kids and like willing to like help. He kept saying settle down, but he just really didn't, a lot of rote activities, he didn't really get them thinking much. So yeah, so I don't know. What do you guys, when you see that, what do you think about with the feedback that it was able to produce? Do you think something like that would be helpful to you?
Was good. I would say I think it would be helpful. And then the other thing is, regardless of the type of language is used, you can prompt it to, I guess, adjust the language accordingly. Like I haven't done it
Yes.
yet, but I've been flirting with the idea of uploading a sample of something of my own writing and have the AI use that as a guide in terms of phrasing that is aligned with how I typically phrase things.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. So, say you're disappointed in the feedback, or you don't like the wording of it, or you're like, what do I tell them to do differently? It didn't say that. You don't just have to keep this report and do nothing else. You can go right back into ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever you're using and say, I have a follow-up question on this item. What would you suggest I could say to the teacher as next steps? Or you could say, I need a different wording that's a little bit, more personable, and just kind of tell it what you need, and it will adjust. So that's one important thing to remember, is you can always go back in and ask for more. I've had to do that at times, say like, you didn't really give me any examples of why this score is, a 2 instead of a 3, and then it'll actually elaborate more if you ask it. I see, is it Nisha or Nisha? I don't know if I'm saying that right. You have your hand up?
Nisha.
Okay. Go
Hi,
ahead.
Laurie.
Hi.
Yes, I think that, and I agree with everything that you shared thus far. I think that it's a great starting point, but I know for like in my school, I work in New York City public schools. I know that like for most cycles, we have like focuses. So a lot of the times when I'm using AI, I kind of have to give it a little bit of guidance in terms of what I want my lens to be. It's always a good, it's always a good start to get what AI thinks, but then I guide it along to like if I'm focusing on 2B, if I'm focusing on 3C, if I'm focusing on 1A, or if I'm supporting a teacher and I know that their strength lies here and I want to make sure I give them a high leverage, I might give them send in that direction, like, hey, can you give me like a highly effective practice for this domain? My teacher does well, da 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 da. So I think it's like, like you kind of like putting your thoughts, like you were saying earlier, into it and like navigating it to what you want it to actually say.
Yes. I really love that idea that you have a focus area that you just all hone in on at once. We don't do that in my school, but I would like that, I think, because then everybody's working towards the same goal. Okay. So you can see how it does give you some good information to work with, but you do have to tweak it. You can't just run with that when you get it, and you might have to follow up with more questions. So again, it can only evaluate what you let it see and hear. So always, ask it for follow-up, or don't be afraid to change things. You don't have to just copy and paste. So the last thing I want to talk about is another way to think about using AI in the evaluation process, or just in the teacher improvement process, teacher development process, is instructional coaching. We all know that instructional coaching is really helpful to teachers. It can change their practice. It can be a key driver of their development, but many teachers resist this kind of help, especially veterans who have been in the business a long time. They're like, I don't need a coach. I don't need help. I don't need any help. Especially if it's an actual person that they have to be vulnerable with, they hate that. So I feel like we can use AI to help them. And I'm trying to create this for my teachers, a way for them to get the coaching without anybody knowing and to get some good help and good ideas. So there is something called, somebody mentioned it earlier, a Gemini gem. So basically there's Gemini gems, there's what they call spaces in school AI. And it's a place where you can save a prompt and rubric for future use. So this can make everything faster. Like you could just create one for yourself with your prompt for doing your observation reports. But you can also really be explicit with the prompt and actually train AI to be a chat bot that will coach a person providing input to it. So, to coach a teacher. And this is what I have developed. And I'm just starting to try it a little bit with my teachers here in Eden. And I have one that loves it. Like she tried it and she was like, oh my gosh, I just kept asking follow-up questions and it really helped me come up with so many great lesson ideas. I had another teacher who tried it and he was like, I don't know, it was weird. I'd rather talk to a person, which is fine. Everybody is different. But so I'm slowly trying to see what they think about it. But I think it could be a game changer if it was something that caught on. So when you make a prompt like this, that's going to be more of an interaction with a teacher, and I'll show you what Gemini gems look like and what school AI spaces look like in a second. But you have to get really detailed, and you read my prompt, it's actually like I'm teaching a person what to do with a teacher, right? So you're an instructional coach who is going to provide teachers with feedback on their lesson plans. Greet the teacher by saying, hello, I'm excited to help you with your lesson plan today. Please upload a copy of your plan. After the teacher uploads a copy of the plan, review it with the criteria outlined in the Danielson rubric attached. Provide the teacher with a summary of your feedback and a chart that lists specific feedback for each element of the rubric. After providing this, ask, do you have any additional questions? If the teacher enters another question, try to answer it. Continue to ask, do you have any additional questions? And provide a response until they say no. When they say no, respond with, it was a pleasure working with you today. Good luck with your lesson. And this actually did work for us. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to launch my Gemini gem and show you what it looks like. So, and this is the link to this is in the slide. So if you wanted to use it with your teachers, you could share it with them, or you could copy my prompt and you make one for a different rubric. Because if you go into Gemini gems, you can always create new gems. But the only thing I don't like about this is when they go in there, they have to press this like play button in order to get it started, and it doesn't really tell you to do that. So that's a little weird. But as long as they know that, you can see when you launch it, it says exactly what I said it to say. Hello, I'm excited to help you with your lesson plan today. Please upload a copy of your plan. And it will go through the whole conversation with them. Tips for Gemini, make sure, because I made this mistake at first, make sure all your links for documents that you upload have an anyone with a link can view sharing capability, because if you don't, it won't, it'll make a glitch and it won't work. And again, just that making them hit that arrow to launch it, just make sure they know that. But this is an example of a coaching conversation that I tried. I uploaded a lesson plan, and it says, thank you for uploading your lesson plan, your elementary music lesson plan. And it went through all of this feedback. And again, you'll have the link to this. You could view it in more detail. But you can see how it said, do you have any additional questions? And then I said, what about domains 2, 3, and 4? Because it didn't really say anything about those because it was evaluating a lesson plan. It says, that's an excellent question. The Danielson framework is designed to be observed during a live lesson. Since your lesson plan only provides a structure, not evidence of actual teaching, my feedback for domains 2, 3, and 4 must be based on inferences and anticipated behaviors. So I thought it was pretty interesting that it said that, and then gave like kind of a, an anticipated level of feedback that they would get if things went as planned in the lesson. So then it gave some things like for domains 2, 3, and 4. And then it asked do you have any additional questions? I said no, and it said it was a pleasure working with you today. Good luck with your lesson. So I thought it was pretty fun and cool that I was able to get it to do that. I did the same thing with school AI. It's pretty similar to do a school AI space. It was less glitchy than Gemini. I liked it in that way because there were all different ways to share documents. You didn't have to just put a link in. And the only thing I didn't like about it, it didn't give a lot of feedback. It kind of just pulled highlights until I asked it to give me feedback on everything again. So you got to be very explicit, more explicit with school AI than you do with Gemini. But this is what a school AI space looks like. So if you go into this, you can click, and you have a school AI account, which is free to set up. You can click remix and use my space to make your own using whatever rubric that you use in your district. But I'll just show you the preview so you know what it looks like when it launches. And it might take a second. That's the only thing. And it says, hello, I'm excited to help you with your lesson plan today. Please upload your plan. So it'll go through the same process. And then I uploaded a copy of what the conversation looked like. It wasn't as neat and organized and easy to read when I tried to, print it. But it did go through, do you have any additional questions? I said, yes. Why didn't you give me feedback on all elements? And it said I focused on the elements that stood out. If you would like, I'll provide insights on additional elements. And I said, yes, please give me feedback on all elements in domains 1, 2, and 3. And then it did. And then it said, do you have any additional questions? I said, no. And it said, it was a pleasure working with you today. So I think there's great potential with this, but I'd love to hear what you guys think, because I've just started to use this with my teachers, and I'm hoping to perfect it and get them to really utilize it to help them.
I think we heard from at least one person who's using it currently in some capacity. Is there
Oh, okay.
anybody else who has used it in some capacity and maybe you want to just kind of tell us how and what you have thought of it so far?
Yeah, this is George McAllister, assistant principal. I've used AI in a bunch of different ways. Like yesterday, I was at we had a people personnel services breakout session talking about how we can communicate better to the community about what special education is, et cetera. And so I threw in a few prompts like marketing plan, highlighting staff, highlighting students, what sort of hashtags, how we should do this, and to spit out 15 different ways, themes, etc. So I think that's the thing too, is just throw it into AI real quick if you have an idea or what are some great teaching strategies to talk about, um, you know, teaching about the stock market crash, and then getting some ideas, strategies, or other sort of ideas. So I think that's the way I encourage staff members to use it, just as a way of getting new ideas. Like, oh, I never thought about approaching it that way. So,
Thank you for sharing.
Laurie, I thought it was really interesting when you said earlier that you kind of shared with some of your teachers just to kind of get them thinking about it. Maybe they wanted to choose to get some good coaching and feedback through AI rather than through that other person in the room. And
Yeah.
it seems like, I think it's fair to say that in most of our schools and buildings, we would have, nothing we do has to be for everyone, certainly not one size
Right.
fits all, but just putting options out there. It seems like I'd like to know what everybody thinks who's here today, but it seems like you're always going to have those early adopters, right? People who are already comfortable with technology, probably, and would welcome the opportunity to do something different like that. And just because it's not a big number of people who jump to that opportunity. I think you said one. That doesn't matter. That's one
Right.
person and she loves it. And she will talk to her friend and say, hey, you should try this. And maybe the friend will love it, or maybe like the other person, nah, I'd rather speak to a person. That's fine. But, giving people the opportunity to look at some of these as options of ways to grow, not necessarily having to do with evaluation or scoring or formal reports is a really good thing that I think a lot of people would kind of welcome. I think a lot of folks would like to grow and get feedback, but that old, have someone else in the room is has never
Yeah.
been ideal, but it's what we've
No.
got. So it's just great to think you can do something and maybe have a couple of people plant a seed with it, who kind of take to it and like it. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Just kind of thoughts about what was shared today, or something you're doing, or a question you have about what was shared today?
I do have a question in regards to the gym bot that was shared. Is that something specific to gym, or is that something you can do in any of the AI platforms?
So Gemini has gems, School AI has spaces, and I saw a couple of people in the chat were saying like Chat GPT now has something called projects that's similar. I haven't tried it, but and then Copilot, Microsoft Copilot has something called notebooks. So I guess they're probably, I feel like they compete with each other. So when something comes out in one area, I feel like then the others try to create their own version of it. So I bet a lot of them do have these things.
Okay. Okay. And let me ask you a question. Is that any of that information, once you create that space, is any of that information shared with you on the information that's shared with the teacher based on their lesson?
I don't think it is, because I think it would be saved in their account. I've had teachers use it and I haven't seen what they've put in.
Got it.
One teacher did share with me what she got out of it, but I did not see it with my own eyes when I logged in.
Okay. All right. Because I can see how that can take
Yeah,
away
good
the
point though. That
pressure.
would be weird. Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I can see how it can take away the pressure of responding to someone, especially if you feel like your questions may not be well developed. You know, your earlier career teachers, how they could struggle with asking the right questions. So having that privacy will allow them to ask any question they can think of. I just would have liked to know if that information was then shared back. So maybe you could provide like some, other resources and approaches that could be utilized in the building. So some other things, veterans might have at their fingertips as well, to
Yeah, that's
support this.
interesting, to think about, like, even telling them that I can't see it. Like, I don't know if they would ever assume that I could,
Okay. Just a question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Laurie.
Thanks.
So I wanted to just say thank you so much for this, because for me, writing observations is such a challenge, just because it takes me a really long time to align Danielson to the evidence, because I want it to be perfect. I know there's nothing that's perfect. And so and I never heard of of any of these like Gemini or anything. So I really appreciate this. So like my question would be like, so do I just Google these and just try to, mess around with them? What?
I'm going to share my slides with Karen, and she's going to send them out. And so, yeah, there's links right in my presentation that you can get right to mine. You can use mine, or if you're using Danielson, or you could, like kind of modify it to make your own.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm also just going to give everybody just kind of a heads up that something that's in the planning stages for the summer is a 2-day online AI boot camp. And we hope that the first day is more for folks who are just starting out with the most basic, like, here's how you put it in, because we need that. Not just dancing along with all the, the finer points of something, but here's how you put it in there. Something at that level. And then the second day will be a little bit more enhanced and advanced. And maybe people who took the first day would also like to take the second day. But we're looking forward to that. So keep your ears open for AI Boot Camp this summer. And remember that the workshops that we do, most of them are done by our SAANYS members. These are members teaching members. We don't feel much of a need to go out looking for national experts on learning topics for our members, because we have such a richness of resources with our members. So all of this is a great example of that too. So keep your ears open for AI Boot Camp.
Nice.
Day one, what button do I push first?
I love it. That's great. I was thinking, as some of us were talking, that we kind of need more on just AI and how to use it. So that's great.
Laurie, another thing I was thinking about, because getting back to our word enhance, maybe somebody is not ready to actually use AI to, share their notes and actually even get feedback yet. Maybe we're not there yet, but, one really, I think a thing we aspire to do in our post-observation conference is be that instructional leader. And if we're going to kind of highlight something that needs improvement, maybe you need to ask higher order questions, a typical kind of example, we want to be able to just provide some resource or support for that too, not just tell the teacher you should do this and have the teacher say, well, if I was good at it, I'd be doing it now. So what can you do to help me? So I think AI would be very helpful at even a simpler level. Resources, give me resources to support a teacher so that he or she can ask questions that involve more critical thinking. And it will pop up. I can see some of the resources it will show you. But finding them, I think, becomes even more of a snap. So just providing resource support on points we identify that need improvement really helps us be more of that instructional leader, rather than what we don't want to be is the scorer, the
Correct.
evaluator.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right.
Anything else before we? Well, Laurie, I really want to thank you. This was wonderful. And you gave us so much to think about and a lot of different ways we can start to continue to get our feet wet a little bit.